If you want your model to really stand out and look amazing, sometimes it takes more than just creativity. You also need a bit of money for tools and parts. Hey, what's up? Welcome to the latest episode of L-Space. And in this episode, I'm gonna use some relatively cheap materials. Actually, let's be real, super cheap materials to make my Gunpla look more refined. The kit I'm using is a Gundam ground type from KK, which I have already made a video about it before. The yellow parts on the chest are kinda chunky, so I'm planning to rebuild that section using copper sheet. Plastic sheet is also okay, but I couldn't find one thing enough for this job. Since the grill might end up looking a bit empty, I am going to add this leftover part inside. It's an extra piece from high-grade E-frame nut version. First, I need to trim away some plastic with a hobby knife, so there will be enough space to fit in the part. Also, the gray part needs a bit of sanding. That's just the basic stuff, so I won't go into the details here. There's one thing I want to clarify. The main purpose of this video is to share my thought process. You don't have to use the same parts as I did. You can definitely do something else like extra thrusters, or pull some wire from runners, or even use copper wire in different thickness to build piping. All these are cheap tricks, but super effective when adding details. There is a small hole on the left side of the chest. Honestly, it looks kind of plain, so I used the drill bit to make it a bit larger. Then I took out this metal part. Actually, it's just a little thing that people use to make DIY bracelets. They're really cheap. You can get hundreds of them for less than $1 in China. Next comes the most challenging part, building the wind grill. For this, I used a 0.3mm thin copper sheet. It's basically like paper cuttings. I used a pencil to draw out the dimensions, then cut it out with scissors. I measured it with a ruler, but a caliper would have been way more accurate. Well, I have to admit that everything I have shown you so far is actually the wrong way to do it. That's because raw copper sheet is still pretty hard. If you cut it straight with scissors, the edges tend to warp or get messy. So what's the fix? Well, actually all you need to do is to heat it up first. Using a gas stove might be a bit over the top, but the lighter works just fine. Once it's treated, the copper gets way softer and it's much easier to bend and cut. Of course, after cutting it out, it's usually kind of warped and uneven, so you'll need something heavy to flatten it. I did it with my etching set, but actually you can just use any flat surface and something heavy, like a metal block or whatever. It works the same. And here comes the most difficult part, gluing the grill into the white frame. And that brings up another question, what kind of glue should be used? I have tried both Mr. Cement S and regular super glue. Super glue is strong but tends to get messy. Mr. Cement S dries very slowly and isn't as strong, but it's a lot more forgiving. You are less likely to screw it up. So whenever I can use Mr. Cement S, I go with that. If it doesn't work, then I bring out the super glue. When I was designing the grill, I looked at real-life examples. If you want it to look more realistic, you need the density. A sparse grill just looks a little bit cheap, so I decided to cover up the internal parts with slats. It will give off a much cleaner and more detailed vibe. Once everything is done, if there is some leftover dried super glue on the slats, you can just use a small brush to apply a bit of debonder to clean it off. But I noticed this particular debonder I'm using only works well with certain glue brands. So yeah, maybe test it out first before going all in. So here is the result. What do you think of it? Personally, I think it turned out pretty good. Alright, that's it for this episode. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Next episode, I'm going to do something really shining.